The case today is press conferences, basically. It's whether tennis players, namely Naomi Osaka, of course, she pulled out of the French Open because she didn't want to speak to the press after her first round match at Roland Garros. She was subsequently fined $15,000, I think. So I guess the question today is, should tennis players, professional tennis players, and we could take that wider, all sporting people for that matter professionally, should they have to speak to the press as part of their obligations?
Kirstie, you kick it off.
Well, I think absolutely, and I think you're going to say the same with this. There's so many different reasons why, but it promotes the game, whatever sport or athlete you're talking about. This is how fans get to feel what a player's like. You get an insight into their life, you know, what kind of human being are they? This is whether you decide, do you like that person, do you not like that person? I mean, take LeBron James, he has to front media, and they have to front media an hour before the game. Our All Blacks have to front media before and after. You cannot get away from this. This is the business. Broadcasters pay massive rights, massive amounts of money for the rights, and that comes with access to athletes, because people at home, and we're fans as well, we're consumers, that's what we want.
Yeah, and we are the number one stakeholder. As a fan, what do we want? We want access to the players. We want to know exactly what happened out there on the court, on the field, wherever they're playing their chosen sport. If they've had an absolute shocker, who was to blame? If there was a refereeing howler, like, how are they going to approach that issue? What are they going to say about it? Are they going to take it to a higher power? And it also, like we can often... We often hear the athletes say, well, you know, like these people in the press conferences are mean and nasty and they're asking bad questions. They are the interim between the player and the fan. Without that question being asked, the fan doesn't find out the information that they require. And I think in this day and age, the journalists involved in those press conferences are probably putting those questions in a more palatable manner than what people on social media would. Because we're seeing, like, so many athletes and well-known people around the world, they get hounded on social media.
Or Joe Harton this week, the netballer.
You know, so I don't think it's that bad. I think it services the stakeholders of the game, the fans, and there shouldn't be an issue with it.
Also, depending how you come across in a press conference or in an interview after the game, that will depend whether you're liked across New Zealand, across the world, and whether you're going to get endorsements and sponsorships. Take Tom Robinson, who's been the fill-in captain of the Blues, for example. He's one of those people that are good at media. Some people aren't good at media, but they still have to do it. Sonny Bill Williams didn't like doing media, but he still did it a couple of times when he was here at the Blues.
And now he's working for the media in Australia.
And he's working for the media.
So,
go figure.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they don't want to do it, but then they're quite happy to do it once their career is over.
And they know what it means to them. It's money, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's endorsement deals. I mean, Naomi Osaka, I think you've got the figures, but her career earnings for last year, $75.8 million.
Huge.
New Zealand dollars, 50 million of that in US dollars came from endorsements.
Yeah.
She's got the biggest deals around the world, Louis Vuitton, Nike. If her face wasn't out there, there is no way that she would have these big endorsement deals.
Absolutely not. She'd just be another person posting pictures online, and maybe people would get in behind her, maybe they wouldn't, but because of her platform, because she's one of the best players on the face of the planet, she is, I guess she's entitled to those deals. People, I mean, she's the perfect storm. She's American, she's Japanese, she's in the American market, the Asian market. She's saying all the right things around Black Lives Matter and the police shootings, the tragic police shootings in the United States. And so people want to get on board this vehicle. And one of the issues with her stance is, like, she made it publicly. Why didn't she go privately to the WTA Tour and the organisers of the Grand Slams?
It was handled poorly, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
it's
so.
It's been handled poorly for the entire week since she put the tweet out there saying she wasn't going to front media.
Yeah, like, just go and have a quiet word and say, look, I'm struggling a little bit. Whether I'm severely depressed or I've got mental health issues, I don't think we can trivialise that. If she's going through all of that, have a private conversation with the organisers of the tournament and say, how can we make this work better, not only for me, but maybe some of the other tennis players out there who are going through the same ordeal.
I would like to say, I mean, you've just mentioned it there, but she's spoken about these severe bouts of depression that she's had since winning the 2018 US Open. And, I mean, none of us can say we're experts on mental health, can we? And I'm sure JK would be an amazing person to speak about this and what impact it actually has on athletes and how much pressure is on these people. I know that, yes, she should be doing media, but there's obviously a deeper issue here around mental health, and it's very, very difficult to comment on, and she's the only one that knows how she's feeling.
Yeah, JK, we've seen him over the years talk about developing coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're not experts in that field, but go and do something that invigorates you. Go and get some exercise.
Exactly.
Do something. Take some time out for yourself. Don't just go through the daily grind, week after week, month after month, and don't come up for air. Do something that takes care of yourself. And so, I suppose Naomi, she's in a really privileged position where she's earning that kind of coin, where she would have access to the very best mental skills coaches and an ability to work through these issues. So,
but how do you work through them on a public stage when you're constantly being scrutinised? It's such a hard debate, isn't it?
Does this come down to potentially some training in terms of the way to handle media? Because we've all interviewed people and dealt with athletes that you will talk to them outside of the game and they say, I hate doing media, I don't like doing media, but they do the media. And when you speak to them at the ground or wherever they may be, I always like to say people get into a bit of a media mode, that the glaze overcomes and then they start giving you the questions, or the answers that you expect to your questions, right? But as I say, you talk to them outside of it, I don't like doing media, but they're trained to the point where they're able to deal with that and give you an interview.
Well, some are and some aren't. I mean, you've seen in recent years people like TJ Perenara, Aaron Smith, they're more likely to speak their mind. Tom Robinson, he had an amazing quote on the weekend speaking about Finlay Christie's try. He said it was like a ginger running away from the sun.
Oh, that's offensive, Kirstie. You can't say that.
Well, he can, because he is also a redhead and he's proud of it as well. But you have people that are really good at it and they know that it's good for their brand. So I think it's changing. People are now deciding who they want to be in the media.
Yeah. What I will say is this. So, like, you guys obviously spend a lot of time around the rugby scene. When it comes to rugby and press conferences and doing the media, you can defer to teammates, coaches, and all of that. So
Totally different in a team sport.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Kane Williamson's the prime example. Whenever he scores a big score, it's the team, isn't it?
No. What the point I'm making, Jeff, is
hide.
you can hide.
That's what I'm saying as well. Yeah.
So you can say, okay, well, this week I'm doing media, but next week, Jeff McTainsh is up in front of the media. The following day, it's Kirstie. So with the tennis players, after they've played their match, day after day, every second day at a Grand Slam, they are up in front of the media. Maybe there's if we're trying to come up with a solution here, so that they're not constantly being hounded,
Maybe the coach is put up
Yeah.
the second or
Yeah,
second
exactly.
time.
Yeah, maybe somebody from the athlete's team is put up, whether that's in tennis or golf. The exception to the rule is probably supercars, because they're really good. I think they understand the game, where they're very well spoken and they're really grateful for the sponsors that come on board, and they're really good at nailing those sort of marks, like, unfortunate today, put the car into the wall, but thanks so much to Super Cheap Auto and like they know where their bread is buttered. But I'm trying to come up with a solution. Maybe it is up to the coach every so often to go into bat for a player if they've had a terrible game and they want to hide and they're not feeling up to it. They don't want the pressure of being attacked.
And I think sometimes in that case, the media would probably get better answers from the coach than they would do from the players.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a way of getting around it. But
How do you think, did Roland Garros handle this in the right way?
Did you see the
and the
tweet
4
that they
Grand
put out?
Slams, did they handle this well?
I suppose they had it just sort of put on them, like, oh dear, one of the best players in the game is gonna,
Did you see the
boycott
tweet though that Roland Garros put out? It had a picture of Nadal, Kei Nishikori was in there, and a couple of others, and it said something along the
They
lines
get
of
it.
they get the brief or whatever, with a tick.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's quite incendiary, given that she's dealing with mental health problems here and long bouts of depression, and you go throw something like that out. Was that
Did
the
they
right
have a
way to
choice,
handle it?
though? If they came out and said, okay, Naomi, it's fine, you don't have to, would other players that don't like the media also, and that are introverted or claim to be, will they also say, I'm dealing with mental health issues as well, and I'm not going to do media?
Yeah.
So you open a can of worms, don't you? How
But
can you deal with this?
a lot of players.
Unwinnable situation.
A lot of the players need to do the press conferences because they need the exposure. whereas
She doesn't.
Osaka doesn't. You know, we said earlier all the money's rolling in because of who she is and what she represents, and other players don't have that luxury. They need to go there. They need to put on their Nike cap. They need to put on their Rolex watch or whatever, and that's where the money rolls in for them, you know, like, so they need to do it.
All players need it. This is a quote from Rafael Nadal, and we know how big he is, right? Without the press, without the people who normally travel, who write the news and achievements that we have around the world, we probably would not be the athletes that we are today. He is a huge name, and he's earned a lot of money, and he's saying that. So they all need it.
Yeah, of course they need it, but then in Naomi's case, she can't cope with it. And it comes back to, okay, if she's struggling with her mental health, how do they put the blocks in place so that she can rise above it? And, you know, it's not hard. I mean, look, we work in the media and we feel anxious. She's spoken about her anxiety that comes from being questioned about her clay court record and things like that. You know, when the camera goes on, we also feel a little anxious, but you find a way to deal with it.
What about when the mic's turned on you and questions are asked of you today, this morning?
Yeah. Oh, I'm freaking out. You know, the sweat's like running down.
McTainsh is interviewing me. Oh, God, what's he going to say?
Yeah,
I'm terrified. Right. I guess the other thing out of this, though, guys, that some good that could come of it is we are having a discussion about mental health, right? And so it's obviously a delicate situation for the Tennis Federation, for Roland Garros, for the other slams to deal with. But you would hope out of it that, as we're sort of discussing here, that something, you know, pragmatic can come of it where players can be helped and there is, you know, a pathway in future to deal with these situations more smoothly.
What I want to know is she the only one?
Yeah.
You know, like this is but it's basically the first time that I can think of that somebody has come up with this. So is she the only one? How many are there? And then what will the tour do to help these athletes? Because we know how important it is. Rafa Nadal knows how important it is. Roger Federer knows how important it is. So how do they help people that require the help?
Do you think perhaps there needs to be some sort of review, Kirstie, from the Federation as to why players are dealing with these stresses? Are they undue stresses? Do they need, you know, do they need better mental skills coaching, more support?
I mean, we talked about it just before we went live, right? But does social media have a big impact on mental health? And has that changed over the last sort of 5 years? I mean, she has 2 million or more than 2 million followers.
2.3
on
mil.
Instagram alone.
Yeah.
And there's so many different channels, and so people have access, you know. There are a lot of haters out there, and we know this, Goran, because...
But not to that extent.
No.
Not to that extent. So, you know, like we might sit there and receive a message every 6 weeks or
Saying
whatever.
you're
and
annoying.
Say, yeah, I'm annoying, I'm the mayor of the douchebags or something like that.
Like Joe Harton has received.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, the media is one aspect, and I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as what the social media aspect is, because you've got people who aren't putting things in a palatable way.
Hiding behind a keyboard.
Yeah, exactly, and just drilling these people. And, you know, we're seeing it time and again. Latrell Mitchell in the NRL.
Absolutely
you know,
shocking.
Yeah, earlier
Disgusting.
in the year, raving about some of the awful things that have come his way on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. To me, that is a much bigger issue than what a journalist is going to ask in a press conference
100%.
at a tennis tournament. And, you know, how do you protect the athletes from that? Other than, I don't know, paying a social media, advisor or somebody like who's a filter who can
so difficult,
go through it all. Like,
it's difficult if you're reading comments like that to process it and to just spit it out and forget that that's happened. And I mean, she's specifically said that 2018 winning that US Open, and we know how controversial that final was. So was it? I mean, we can only speculate, but it must have been social media, people attacking her for what happened.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Which is so awful.
Yeah.
No one should have to deal with it in any workplace.
Yeah.
And this is a job.
It's funny, like in 2021, we're doing everything we can in the public eye to ensure that people aren't bullied or made fun of or persecuted for their religion or their race or, you know, all of that. Yet there's this undercurrent, people hiding online. It's almost like it's shifted from face to face to just hiding behind a keyboard and doing it there. And so we need to eliminate that somehow. I don't know how you do it. Maybe that's for some of the tech companies to come up with, how you protect people, athletes, celebrities, from all that abuse.
I do think she's done the right thing. Maybe the process wasn't right and how it's been handled over the last week, but she could have easily have still gone to this press conference after the first round victory and did what Marshall Lynch said in the NFL. Do you remember that press conference? And
I'm only
said,
here because
I'm
I
only
have to
here
be.
because I don't want to get fined.
Yeah.
And just repeated that message for 5 minutes. She could have easily did that, but she didn't, did she?
Yeah, no, she didn't.
So, and you would hate that, right?
Yeah, of course we would. I mean,
You get nothing from it.
No,
It benefits nobody.
you just come across as petulant and immature, and I suppose that's the initial reaction, and then when you find out what she's been dealing with, you're a little more understanding.
Yeah.
But as we said earlier, probably a different way of going about raising the issue, but we're talking about it now, and let's address it. What are the next steps forward? Not only for Naomi, but anybody else who's not feeling great, put in front of the media, asking questions they don't want to answer. Let's find a way forward.
And if she can come forward and kind of be a champion for this and speak for those that don't have a voice, because she has such a reach, such a big platform, you'd hope that going forward she does have the courage to go into those press conferences and speak her mind and reach out to those people and address these sort of situations, because there's 22 million followers or something like that. It's crazy. So, I just hope that she gets it sorted, really. And
I mean, she was like, I suppose with all the cash behind her, she's in a really good position to not only speak on behalf of herself, but for others who might be doing it tough. We don't know. We can only speculate again what she's heard, what she's discovered in the locker room, and maybe somebody who is, on the outskirts of the top 100. And they say that there are only 100 jobs in world tennis, top 50 men, top 50 women. Somebody who isn't earning the money, who has to go to these press conferences, who not only doesn't like it, but it really impacts their mental health. Maybe she's a voice for these people, because the last thing they need when money is hard to come by is to be fined.